a video about how to excel at GCSE Geography, and this is coming from me, who's basically done his GCSE like nearly a bit over 2 months ago now, so nearly 2 months ago. So what I'm here to do is just allow you to make the most of the revision tips for GCSE Geography and enable you to get that grade 9 or that target grade that you want. But it's mostly if you want to achieve your target grade or beyond your target grade even. So the first tip that you'd want to do is to ensure that you answer all the questions. Every question is valuable. One marker is valuable. 2 markers valuable. In fact, there's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. Then there's 6 markers. Then there's 8 markers. So yeah, it's really important to answer them, especially the higher mark questions. If you get stuck on one, try your absolute hardest. Even if you get kind of like the statistics wrong, but you know what you're talking about, you're still gonna get like you might get max 2 or 3 marks, but getting maximum 2 or 3 marks is better than getting no marks at all. So it's really, really important that you focus on that aspect. So my second tip is to ensure that you have a ruler and a calculator as well as a pencil. Obviously, you're going to have a black ink pen, given that you're going to go into GCSEs anyway, so the blue ink from the pen will not just cut it. So the important part is that you bring all the resources that you need, since you will almost always, in every GCSE geography paper, if not always, you will need a calculator, because you will need to do some sort of averages or percentages or some graph work, in which case you might need a ruler as well as a calculator. It's not going to be a ruler for every paper, but still very, very important that you still bring your ruler and calculator along, since if you don't, that could cost you some marks in the long run. You also will need to bring a pencil, since pen does not count even if you're quite desperate and are looking for some marks. Some examiners will literally not give you any marks because using pen instead of pencil actually isn't allowed for some specifications. OCR, I think it is allowed, but still don't gamble. My third tip then is to actually revise some of the structure for the longer mark questions. It's really, really important that you do so, since if you trip up on the longer mark questions, then you're basically going to be cooked for the rest of the exam, since most of it rides on those longer mark questions anyway. They can be anywhere from 2 to 3 8 markers, maybe 1 or 2 6 markers, but the point is you're going to need to revise the structure. So the structure that I use for 6 markers is, if it starts with explain for a 6 marker, then you do point evidence explain for one paragraph, then you point evidence explain for the second paragraph. So for explain, it's literally just that straightforward. You bring your point, you add your statistic, then you explain. It's not really too hard, but then there are some difficulties if it's literally any other keyword, like analyze or discuss. Sometimes they use discuss for 6 markers, although it's more of an 8 marker thing. But if there's any keywords other than explain, you need to do point evidence explain, and then you need a conclusion. Usually, if you don't put a conclusion, you only get 4 or 5 marks. And even if you do get full marks, it's a really good way to show examiners how you solidified your skills, or just a justified conclusion to your argument. It's really useful to put a conclusion in there. For 8 markers, however, you always need a conclusion. You can't just skip that out, otherwise you only get 6 or 7 marks. So the first thing you need to do for 8 markers is usually point evidence explain, then point evidence explain for another paragraph, then you do a conclusion. The reason why it's even more important to do a conclusion in an 8 marker is because you're guaranteed to lose marks if you don't add one. If you just do point evidence explain, and just leave it at that, you're basically going to be guaranteed to not get 8 marks. So it's really, really really important that you add that conclusion for all 8 markers and for all 6 markers except the ones which start with explain. Another important thing is that you remember all your statistics, and the way I do that is doing a lot of exam questions and implementing the statistics and trying to remember all of them for a lot of exam questions. That's the best way to do it. The more exam questions you do, the better exam technique you're going to have, and the better exam technique you're going to have, that means the more marks you're going to get, because you're going to be more efficient in the geography exam, because it's really important to remember your statistics. If you don't, then basically all your evidence is gone, and then you can't really explain much. So it's really, really important that you remember all your statistics. For example, if you're talking about food insecurity, then you could say, oh, 4.7 million households in the UK are food insecure. That's what you could say, for example, if you're talking about food insecurity. It's really important that you have those evidence, that statistics, so that way you can keep your argument flowing, you can keep your argument running, and therefore actually lead into something that makes sense, rather than just doing nonsense and not really making anything out of your explanation. The final tip I'm going to give is to always ensure that you get the correct case study. If you put some random case study, or if you didn't pay enough attention to the question, then you're probably going to get either 0 or 2 marks, because the case study questions are almost always going to be either 6 or 8. It is very, very, very important that you get the case study right. For example, when I was doing Typhoon Haiyan for the natural disaster, like the hurricanes or cyclones or whatever, while I was doing that, I once accidentally wrote Turkey, Syria, and then when in the last minutes of that, I realised what I did was wrong, since I wrote about Turkey, Syria, which was the Turkey, Syria earthquake in 2023, rather than Typhoon Haiyan. So it's really, really important not to make those mistakes. Always double check the question to ensure you get your case study right. Don't mess it up, otherwise you're probably going to end up with 2, 1 or 0 marks. And you probably don't want that, since for OCR B, geography is 78% for 2025 to get a 9. So it's really important you don't mess up your case studies at all. It's really, really important that you get them picture perfect, because like at least like a third of the marks, or even like 40%, I'd say, relies on memorizing the case study, since for paper 1 and paper 2 is 60 marks each. No, it's 70 marks each for paper 1 and paper 2 for OCR B. So it's really, really, really important to remember that, and you'll go really far. So I hope you enjoyed this video on how to get better at Geography GCSE. I hope you learned a lot from the tips, and I hope you excel at Geography today. If you enjoyed this video, just remember to give us a like and give us a subscribe, since this would really mean a lot to me. And be bright, stay right, and have an excellent day. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.